Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 13 of our course. I hope your week is going well, and I hope your break went well, and I hope you're excited to jump right back into our material. This week, we'll be covering fiscal policy, and we'll be doing it from a Keynesian viewpoint. Remember, from a classical viewpoint, we believe that during these recessions and these peaks and these troughs through our economy, that eventually the invisible hand will take care of the problem itself. Therefore, there's no need for fiscal intervention. However, by a Keynesian view, these short-term shocks can have long-run effects on the economy. Therefore, the government may need to come in and either spend less or spend more to get us back into long-run aggregate supply equilibrium. As a review, GDP is an equation of our consumer expenditures plus our investment expenditures, our government expenditures, plus our exports minus our imports. This week, we'll really be focusing on the G of that equation, or the government expenditures. The government can choose, according to the short-run shocks that are happening within our economy, to spend more or spend less. In the regular business cycle, we'll remember that we have our peaks, our troughs, into our recessions, into expansion, and back up to a peak. When we're in a recessionary gap, the government may choose to increase its spending to get us back into equilibrium with long-run aggregate supply. When they choose to spend more, the price level increases and gets us back into equilibrium. Graph-wise, that's going to look like this, where we are at E0, or equilibrium zero. The government increases its spending along this short-run aggregate supply curve until equilibrium subscript 1 is equal to our long-run aggregate supply. By contrast, we may be outside of our long-run aggregate supply, and we have what's called an inflationary gap. Fiscal policy-wise, when we're in an inflationary gap, a proper response would be to decrease government spending and bring price levels within our economy back down. Graph-wise, that's going to look like this, where we are now in equilibrium subscript 0, which is outside of our long-run aggregate supply. Their goal is to bring our price levels down and back in equilibrium E subscript 1 with LRAS. Now, that is typically what they do on the fiscal policy side. During this time of inflation, we saw it handled primarily on the monetary policy side, or actions done by the Federal Reserve. They can choose to increase interest rates to handle price levels, which has been what has been happening. So, how is all of this spending funded? There's two different ways the federal government can fund this spending. First, they can do it by deficit spending to take on more bonds and more debt to fund this spending. Second, they can increase our tax rates. From a state side here in Utah, we always run a balanced budget. So if they want to increase government spending from a state economy, they must do so only by increasing our tax rates. There is this concept within the text that they go over called the Ricardo equivariance theorem. The Ricardo equivariance theorem states it doesn't matter how these deficits are funded because consumers will adjust their spending either from current spending or If there's a large deficit, they'll adjust that spending to anticipate the future income, which will be less because eventually we'll have to pay back those debts. Finally, the text is going to go over 3 different lags whenever fiscal policy takes place, which these lags can make fiscal policy less effective, and it certainly makes fiscal policy more complicated. The first lag is a recognition lag. And the idea of a recognition lag is it's the time it takes to gather the information to realize that we are in a recessionary gap or we are in an inflationary gap. Unfortunately, data does not come in real time. It takes time to gather that information and realize we are in a recession. The second is the action lag. The action lag is this idea of the time between recognizing that we have a short-term shock where fiscal policy should take place and the time it takes to take action. Sometimes, or oftentimes, politicians will disagree on the proper action to take, and this gap before they come to that decision of agreement is called the action lag. Finally, the last lag is the effect lag, which is the time between when you implement that policy and you start seeing the results of that policy. Oftentimes, because of these lags of recognition and of action and of implementation, you'll see implementation of policy happen too late. And when that happens, the effect of the policy isn't as effective as if they took action in a timely manner. This is the very, very difficult part of getting Keynesian policy right and using fiscal policy to take action for recessions. That is going to be the material covered basically from chapter 13. As always, if you have any questions, reach out to let me know, and we'll look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks.